Welcome, everybody. Can everyone hear me all right? Perfect. Okay. So, my name is Jordan Ojile, and I'm here with my colleague, John Cain, and we are with Feeding Kentucky, which is the food bank organization representing the interests of the many, many pantries and distribution centers all across our great Commonwealth. So, John and I are here today to talk to you about hunger, what's being done, and what more we need to do. So, I'm going to be presenting the slides, and John will be in the Slack in the channel, providing more resources, providing more insights, some stats, some links that you can explore if you're more curious about what I'm talking about. So, we're going to kind of tag team that, and if you have any questions while I'm talking, please jump in. I'll have a Q&A at the end, but I'm also happy to answer any questions while I'm presenting. So let's jump right in. So I titled today's presentation Nourishing Futures because that's what really this is all about. And as you'll see our graphic to the left, food is the #1 school supply. And we really truly believe that at Feeding Kentucky. We work really closely with our schools through John, who was our Kentucky Kids Eat program director. And we want to make meals for all students available year round. So, John, would you be able to go ahead and mute for me? Some of the static in the background is peeking through at times. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. So I want to start with this quote, and I want to get some reactions to it of just what you think it means to you, but also largely for hunger policy. So hunger is not a matter of policy. It is a matter of priority. This has become kind of my mantra as I go around teaching advocacy to folks and letting people in on the world of feeding. It's not a matter of policy, it's a matter of priority. We want to get some estimations in the chat of what this would mean to you. Or if anyone just wants to come off mute and speak to how this speaks to you.
I think, Jordan, that just the sheer fact that we have so many of our school districts, like 145 of our school districts out of the 173 summer meal sponsors, are school districts. So our schools are not only living this, that are making it a priority by being summer meal sponsors to feed kids year round. So I'm very glad to see a lot of our school districts participating today.
Yeah, absolutely. We're happy to have you. We love working with you. I'll take it a step further. I think when I wrote this, it spoke to me because we have things that we know work. We have evidence-based measures. We have best practices from not just other states, but other nations as well. We have interventions that are proven. It's a matter of making those a priority that is the struggle. We're not starting from scratch on, gee, how do we solve childhood hunger? We have plenty of policies that we know work. It's a matter of telling legislators this is what needs to be done and it needs to be made a priority. I'm not going to accept that hunger is just part of the status quo. It needs to be put on the table. So the next thing I'll say is here's our contact information. It'll also be on our last slide. So if you have any questions for John and I, and you want to get involved, or you want to follow up on a point that raised an eyebrow, please don't hesitate to contact us. We'd be happy to answer your questions and work with you. So let's get in the chat. I want to encourage more participation via the chat. I think it's one of the best tools for engaged participation. What do you think the current rate of child food insecurity in Kentucky is? Do you think it's 30%? Do you think it's 40%? I see 1 in 5. Yes, correct. Great job, Emily Smith. You are quick on the draw. It is currently 1 in 5. We are staring down the barrel of 20% of Kentucky children going without consistent nutrition. Feeding America, our national organization, they publish a survey each year called Map the Meal Gap. And it's usually 2 years behind. So this year we got 2022's data, which gave us our first real glimpse at how hunger changed across our state with the pandemic. So during the pandemic, childhood insecurity, food insecurity was at 15%. Why do we think that it would have plummeted over the pandemic? And why, kind of counterintuitively, would it be so much higher now? Kids were home from school. They weren't getting fed in the cafeteria. So what was making that difference on childhood hunger? Exactly. Federal programs ended after the pandemic. Like I said, it's a matter of priority, not a matter of policy. The government made feeding kids a priority during the pandemic. One of the few silver linings of COVID was that we implemented a lot of measures that have been previously hard to get off the table. So it's easy to say, okay, during the pandemic, it was 15%, and then after the pandemic, it was 20%. That is a colossal difference. 50,000 children lost food security in 2022. It's not a gradual shift back up. No, it's the moment federal programs ended, we looked at 50,000 bluegrass children losing consistent access to nutrition. That's inexcusable when we know that it clearly works. It's a matter of priority, not a matter of policy. So where we're at in 2024 today, 87% of kids are enrolled in free or reduced priced meals. And I'll get into a little bit of why that is going forward, but just keep that number in your mind in terms of what we're doing to solve this issue right now. So throw it in the chat. What are some inconsistent nutrition impacts that will be felt in a growing child? What are some things that you think it intersects with? Hard to learn and concentrate? Absolutely. We had a legislator tell us that kids should be able to go through the school day in the morning on a Pop-Tart. And I was going to recommend that he see if he can make it through his committee hearings on just a Pop-Tart, because that quick sugar of Frosted Flakes in the morning or whatever your parent can afford from the Dollar General is going to result in you having less fuel to focus mentally. Poor bone density, absolutely. Discipline problems, fatigue, it impacts their behavior for sure. A lack of a balanced diet has so many intersecting impacts on our vulnerable kids. So some other ones, health and development, which you mentioned, but also academic success. If a kid's not able to concentrate, that's going to lead to lower test scores, less completion of homework. It's also going to impact their mental health. We've seen some really troubling statistics around youth suicide correlated to hunger. If a kid is watching their classmates eat and not have to worry about nutrition all the time, that's going to have a sizable mental impact on them. And that's something that we're trying to push more to the forefront. But it's also hard to get legislators to take that seriously without sounding like we're chicken littling. So there's always a delicate balance of that and advocacy of presenting your warrants without making it seem so dramatic that it gets dismissed out of hand. So what's being done currently, and why isn't it going far enough? So the first program I'll discuss with you is summer EBT. Some of you may have just heard of EBT, electronic benefits transfer, which is what the name of our food stamps currently go under. So think of it this way, it's just summer food stamps, and it is administered to parents. It is federal money that is giving grocery dollars to families with school-aged kids who qualify. Students are not receiving meals at school during summer, and that puts a strain. And summer EBT is designed to pick up that slack. So in 2024, Kentucky gave $120 per month per child for June, July, and August, which goes a long way for those really tight budgets that our struggling Kentucky families are dealing with. Eligibility for summer EBT is determined by safety net enrollment, attendance at a CEP school, or just whether they're already enrolled in free reduced price meals. So summer EBT goes a long way when a kid isn't in the cafeteria to still have food on the table and food in their tummies. All right, let me check the comments, make sure nobody's checking out with a question quite yet. Oh, John's throwing in a graphic. Yes, and I'll illustrate this graphic a little bit more here in a second. Summer meals. are another fantastic way that Kentucky schools are intervening in childhood hunger. It helps with kids being home from the summer. 8.1 million meals were served during summer 2024. That is astounding. That is over a 52% increase over 2023. So clearly capacity is evolving to meet the need with 1 in 5 Kentucky kids going hungry. Also, 84% of summer meal sponsors were schools, which quick silence, muted round of applause for our schools for making that happen. And also a quick shout out to our libraries and our food banks for helping out with summer meal distribution as well. I visited a number of those sites this summer, and I got to say, I was blown away. I spoke with cafeteria workers who were standing out there in 90-degree heat with their food trays as cars came through the drive-through, and they got their identity information and they signed out the meals to the families, and they just went on their way. And you had these cafeteria workers who deserve all the praise in the world, as I talked to them about how sometimes they would pool together their coin jars to erase school meal debt for a needy kid. These powerful stories that are just going unheard by so many crucial stakeholders. It's amazing. I would highly recommend talking to a cafeteria worker. They're some of the best people you'll meet. And I'm sure all of our school nutrition directors can testify to that fact. It is selfless, oftentimes thankless work of the effort they put in year round to make sure that the kids they care about are getting fed. And I think that's commendable. There were over 2,200 sites serving kids meals from May to August. That is crazy. There are 120 counties. That is an astounding number of resources that we have just given families to make ends meet. And it's sort of like when you see a teacher post a story in the newspaper about how the town rallied to get them nice new school supplies. It's one of those bittersweet moments where you're like, wow, that is the triumph of human compassion and the triumph of human will. But it also is a moment that makes you sit back and pause and go, why was this necessary? You know, it's amazing that we've got these cafeteria workers that are intervening to erase school debt, but why are they needing to? It's profound that we were able to marshal 2,200 feeding sites this summer, but why were we needing to? You know, it's fascinating, but at the same time, it's a little bit disappointing that we're still living in a state that needs 2,200 feeding sites. And what I tell legislators every time I go speak to them is we're probably the only lobby that is going to knock on your door today that is trying to put ourselves out of a job. We don't want the food banks to have to exist. We would love for charitable food donations to not even be a thing anymore. We would love for that system to be so robust that the need for 2,200 meal sites is made obsolete. But we don't live in that world quite yet. So let's just focus on applauding those who make this happen until it does.
And then I just want to add that we need more, as this graphic will show. We need more meal sites currently to meet the demand.
Absolutely. So John spent, I don't even want to ask how many hours creating this graphic for us to enjoy today. So this is a map of all 120 counties and how much summer meals was made available this last summer. So as you'll see in the key over here, green counties are those that had it available the entire summer. So a healthy amount, but we still need to go a little bit further. Gray is those that stopped serving before August. The purple is just those that did the first 2 months. So each county kind of picked and choose which way they did it, with a few counties having absolutely no summer meals provided. And that's heartbreaking. We need that gap to be met. I went to a summer meal site in Hardin County, and they were getting people from the county over who were making the trip across county lines because they did not have a distribution center close enough to them. You've got parents driving 20, 30, 45 minutes to get meals in the summer. because they need it closer to them. So elevating that need that John mentioned, we've got to have more people stepping up to the plate until such time that the government thinks that it's their responsibility.
And I just want to share that there are 4 counties on the map for 2024 that did not provide summer meals. I can tell you 2 of those 4 have committed to providing summer meals in 2025. So I want to give a shout out to Caldwell and to Trigg counties. They have stepped up and are going to be providing summer meals this coming summer.
Thank you, John. John is here to balance out my doom and gloom with some positivity and optimism for the future. So we love John for that. It's kind of like good cop, bad advocate. There we go. School breakfast programs. So there are, the more meals that a school can provide, the less strain on a struggling family's budget. Makes sense. And a lot of schools are providing breakfast for their kids, and we commend them for that. But there's also a massive gap in participation. And I'm not saying this in a pointing finger of just y'all need to do better. It's just acknowledging the way our system is currently set up and what more we can do. And I don't think there is a single school nutrition director out there who would disagree with me. I'm just like, there needs to be more emphasis placed on this. And they share that enthusiasm. They want to make it a reality. But that means we got to get these school districts the resources, the support, the capacity that they need to make it happen. So there is currently a massive gap in participation. 291,000 kids that are eligible for free and reduced price meals did not eat breakfast this year. That's a gap of about 50%. And John and I, we meet up frequently to discuss what more can be done for school breakfast. And we're hoping to have a bill on the horizon in the next 2 years. We would love to do more than just kind of empty gesture legislation that says, yay, school breakfast, but it doesn't actually fix that gap. We want to provide our school districts the resources. We want to bridge that gap, and we want to provide that support. And we want to help. Yes, Steve, we want to help you fix the structure. We want to give you the resources necessary, and I would love nothing more to make that 40% next year, 30%, until we've got every Kentucky kid getting breakfast and lunch at their schools. And I can't wait to work with KSNA on that.
Well, I can tell you in terms of all the programs that school breakfast, I love summer feeding, don't get me wrong, but school breakfast is the one that really steals my heart, because when I tell you this, that and farm to school is my 3 top programs. But anyway, the school breakfast program, when I tell you the simple act of making sure a child eats school breakfast can change their life, there is an extensive body of research that shows that it can. And when we don't ensure every Kentucky kid is getting a breakfast at school, which has been shown to be more nutritious than breakfast elsewhere, we are leaving millions of dollars in federal funding on the table that could be funneling down to support Kentucky full school food authorities by not ensuring every child gets school breakfast. And that just, it breaks my heart, because I know schools need money. I know kids need those benefits for academic learning, for health, for achievement. There's also some evidence, like Jordan mentioned, about suicide, that kids that don't eat breakfast are actually more likely to attempt to take their life. And we know from RBS data that the number of children in the week before that survey were administered at the high school and middle school level, that the number of children in Kentucky that are not eating breakfast all 7 days before are creeping up, that we can change lives by getting breakfast, school breakfast, into the hands of these children. Sorry, I went on a tangent, Jordan.
No, I love it. And I'm actually going to toss, Steve stepped up to the plate. So Grant in the group chat asked a great question of, what are the factors driving the gap? Why are so many kids being left without school breakfast? And Steve says that most of the issues with school breakfast programs revolve around access, meaning if meal service times are at an inconvenient time during the school day, is it really accessible? And we'll touch on this a little bit later, because there are a lot of best practices that revolve around breakfast programs that are being tried and tested by other states. So we'll hit on this later about what more can be done to broaden breakfast programs. So just wait, Grant, we'll get to you in a second. So buckle up for lots and lots of acronyms and jargon. I am trying to make this as digestible as possible, but I will be making a drink from a fire hose here in a sec when it comes to CEP. So the community eligibility provision, which we love acronyms that don't outright tell you what we're talking about. It determines meal reimbursement for schools based on the percentage of kids on programs like SNAP. So the community eligibility provision arose as a solution to the red tape and bureaucracy involved with feeding programs. How do you determine how many kids get free and reduced price meals? How do you determine which kids are eligible for those programs? Do you collect forms from all 800 students that go to a school? For a school district, that is reams and reams of paperwork. And so innovatively, they came up with CEP as a solution, where it instead looked at, okay, how many of our kids are currently on some sort of safety net program? How many of our kids are receiving food stamps? How many of our kids are on WIC? And it certifies a school as eligible for reimbursement by the percentage of kids on these programs. So it's an easier way to certify that a school is eligible than collecting several thousand pages from parents at the start of the school year. So currently over 90% of Kentucky schools participate in CEP, which is fantastic. We love giving our schools reimbursement for providing meals. We love the fact that that means that they can spend that money elsewhere on paying their teachers better, buying better curriculum, or any of the other ways that our stretched thin schools need money back in their pockets. We were one of the first states to adopt CEP. We were pioneers in this era, and we really struck out, and it has been immensely successful. But like with all of our policy programs when it comes to feeding, there's still more that can be done. So CEP multipliers, ISP, oh my. ISP is the identified student percentage. So remember how I mentioned that they certified schools based off of a percentage? This is that percentage. How many students qualify for free meals? And that is determined by the percentage of kids on programs like Safety Net. The magic formula that I'll keep in your mind, it is the ISP, the percentage, times a multiplier, and this is where it gets a little bit complicated, tells you what percent of meals that the school will get 100% reimbursed. Basically, if a school provides a meal, it gets entirely covered the cost of. So if a school is able to provide lunch at $4.50 a student, what percentage of meals that the school provides that they get $4.50 back per student? So, and you calculate what percentage of those meals are reimbursed that way by multiplying the percentage by the multiplier. So let's go through what the various multipliers and percentages are. So here's a good rule of thumb. I'm a visual learner. I love tables. I love distilling down information into tables. Let me make sure I'm not missing any questions in the group chat. Okay, perfect. Low ISP, a low percentage with a low multiplier is bad. It's not bad. It's just not as great as it could be. Let's put it that way. A high ISP with a low multiplier is ugly. So remember that formula. If we've got a high ISP, so let's say we've got 50% and our multiplier is 1.6, that is not very many meals being reimbursed for free. If you've got a low ISP of 40 and a low multiplier of 1.5, or a high ISP of 60 and a high multiplier of 2.5, both of those are okay. I say bad because I wanted to go with the whole good, bad, the ugly route. Bear with me. But the best option for our reimbursement is if we have a low ISP and we have a high multiplier. If we have an ISP of, and I'll give examples here in a minute, of 25% and a multiplier of 2.5. That is how you get the maximum amount of meals reimbursed in their entirety. So feel free to take a screenshot of this, take a photo. This table will go a long way to getting us where we need to be. So for my visual learners, math nerds, if you have an ISP, which is current of 40%, and you've got the multiplier of 1.6, only 64% of meals will be reimbursed in their entirety. If you've got an ISP of 62.5 with a 1.6 multiplier, that's when you get 100%. So think about how much you're raising the ceiling. 62.5 is saying that 62% of our kids are eligible for safety net programs. That's not going to apply to all Kentucky counties. That is such a high ceiling, but that is ultimately the threshold you have to raise it to for schools to get 100% reimbursed. Conversely, if you've got only a quarter of your students meeting that threshold, 25% of your students are on SNAP, with the 1.6 multiplier, only 40% of their meals are going to be reimbursed for free. Now, if we go the proposed route of a 2.5 multiplier, this is where we really start to cook. 40% ISP is 100% reimbursed. That's phenomenal. We couldn't ask for better there. So following the table from the previous slide is how we figure this out. Let me make sure. All right. I'm keeping an eye on the chat.
I actually put a question out there for those folks that are participating maybe at schools, and excuse me, it's my grammar is incorrect, but if you are at a district that has some schools that are non-participating in CEP, we're very interested in knowing about those barriers that keep you from going CEP. So I put a question out there, is if that multiplier would go to 2.5, would that enable those schools in your district that are not CEP to go that way? Just you can respond yes, no, give us an ideal.
Yeah. We'll discuss the ramifications of ISPs and multipliers here in a sec as we go down the road of what more can we do. So why does reimbursement matter? If reimbursement is too low, if only 64% of meals are being reimbursed, school districts just won't participate. It won't be financially feasible for them to provide free meals. And they'll just instead return to the old model of a 3-tiered program of having free, reduced price, or full price meals. And that's not what we want to do. We want to be able to provide healthy school meals for all students, which is why CEP is so important. That is the vehicle that we're going to drive to get there. All right, what more can be done? Innovative solutions across these United States. Big table, once again, let me distill it down and make it a little bit easier for everyone to understand. So John sent me this fantastic graphic, which I can't recommend enough. So this is a chart of which states across the United States have healthy school meals for all in some form or another. As you can see, with all the gray states, we are behind the curve. We have really taken the lead on CEP, but we have not bridged the gap and bitten the bullet. The yellow states are where those bills have been introduced. So we're not even introducing these pieces of legislation. We're not even there yet. We're being outstripped by states like Tennessee. And personally, I resent that fact. I think we should be leading the board on conquering childhood food insecurity, especially when we're staring down the barrel of 1 in 5 kids going hungry. Blue states, so Nevada, have a policy in place for 2022 through 2023 and part of the 2024 school year. Orange states, so you're looking at Connecticut, have a policy in place for 2022. Green states are where you find those policies have just been passed. So if you remember back during the election, Governor Tim Walz made a lot of noise about free school meals for Minnesota students. And that happened under his governorship. So if you remember that picture of him being swarmed by kids around his desk, that's what we're talking about. So we really would like in the next year or so to join our comrades in yellow. We would really like to be on this map colored in. And it's pretty inexcusable that we're not already, especially with our rates.
Well, I'm
Jonathan,
gonna be the good cop now. We're only 70 some schools away from healthy school meals for all in Kentucky. That we've got a little ways to go to achieve that.
yes, we do. All right. Breakfast after the bell is one of our best weapons against childhood food insecurity. It dedicates 15 minutes of class time for breakfast during instruction. So remember when Steve mentioned earlier how the reason breakfast participation is slipping through the cracks is just the sheer time of day that it's being given. So doing it after the bell as opposed to before allows for kids to still participate. If they trickle in late, if they make it on time, it takes a little bit of time out of the school day, which is still being used for instruction and is going to place more of an emphasis on it. We've already passed this into law. It just needs to be implemented. So giving our schools the resources to implement breakfast after the bell is going to be crucial. And it's one of our biggest advocacy asks, which won't happen in Frankfort. It'll happen by working with your school districts, seeing what they need to make this a reality. And John found this really helpful graphic. Serving breakfast after the bell can reduce absenteeism by an average of 6 percentage points. Why do folks think that it would reduce absenteeism? What do you think the impact is there? It's nothing complicated, I promise you.
Well, I am heavily food motivated. I will attend something if they give me food.
Absolutely. And I have to believe a lot of Kentucky parents are the same way, that if they know their kid will be fed at school, that'll provide more of a motivation to get them there on time or just have them show up, period. And
a nice locally grown breakfast too will help stir our economy. So that help our local farmers. So that will be very helpful too. If you're interested in the research around, because chronic absenteeism is a big issue right now in Kentucky schools, and No Kid Hungry commissioned a study through the University of California looking at this in some states. If you need that data, you need that report to go to your local school boards or to get buy-in to provide breakfast after the bell, just reach out to me. I'm happy to send you the micro brief of that research. 6% is just the average. Some districts got even more reductions in their absenteeism rates by moving to breakfast after the bell. And I'm happy to share all that with you guys as well. Just reach out.
Yes. Thank you, John. Grab and go. Rather intuitively, this is a name that actually does speak for itself. This model allows students to pick up breakfast from mobile carts and stations in high traffic strategic areas around the school. It's a speedy, easy way for students to pick up breakfast when they arrive. They can eat in the common area or the classroom. So this is a fantastic way to close that breakfast participation gap. Second chance breakfast is another excellent opportunity. It shifts the time of serving breakfast to later in the morning, making it more appealing to those who just aren't hungry at 8 a.m. I remember back in high school for me, an uncomfortable amount of years ago, I recalled a number of times that they provided school breakfast, but there were just plenty of kids who either ate before they came or just aren't hungry in the morning. So this helps close that gap. So to be served before first and second period, to allow for a longer passing time between classes, to allow for the strategy. And it could go a long way to closing that 50%. And then federally, what can we do federally? What can we talk about in DC with all of our fly-ins? Well, there are two twin companion bills called the School Hunger Elimination Act and the Nutrition Red Tape Reduction Act. And they accomplish effectively the same thing, which is increasing the CEP multiplier nationally to 2.5, which, like we said earlier, would go a long way. It would also expand certification, provide retroactive reimbursement from a large pot of money that we are just leaving on the table. And it sets the national standard at a 25% ISP, which will go so far for Leah and Steve to make it more possible for their schools to participate in these excellent programs. So Leah asks, has breakfast times offered after the bell been tracked since the passage of SB 151? Not to my knowledge. John is probably more the person to see that data if it's going to be anyone.
We haven't tracked that. We need somebody to be monitoring that, because I'm trying to find, if you are a school district that your superintendent has authorized, 15 minutes of the attendance day during instructional time for kids to eat breakfast. I want to know about that, because we want to make a champion of that superintendent, because I'm finding it a struggle to find a district where a superintendent has used that law or that Kentucky Revised Statute and put that into practice, because we want to celebrate them and really make them an example for other superintendents in the state. So if you know any, let me know. But I don't know that anybody's tracking that. Katie Embry is on this, or was on this, that she might be able, KDE might be able to weigh in to let us know if anybody is tracking that. Katie, do you know?
Good morning. We do track who participates in grab and go, breakfast after the bell, and second chance. So we do have those, but we do not have it connected if they're using the 15 minutes of instructional time. So partial tracking of that.
Do you know anybody if they do?
We've had a lot of districts who were using the 15-minute, they were just using time after. So they are out there. I just don't know if there's an official coding of that per se.
Thank you, Katie. Appreciate that.
We could not have a better group of advocates collecting data, giving us information. We really appreciate each and every one of you. Steve showed some real enthusiasm for these two bills. The only bad news I have to give is the man on the right, Senator Bob Casey, was the one who sponsored these bills and wrote these bills, and he just lost his reelection campaign in Pennsylvania. So the one bright spot I'll offer from that, I'll take a chance for a little bit of optimism, is this means that we have an opportunity to talk with the Kentucky delegation. This is our chance to speak with the Representative Masseys, to speak with the Representative McGarveys, to get our versions of these bills in the House, to get them moving, to say, hey, you don't got to reinvent the wheel. Here is a text of a bill that we know works for our school districts. Please do this for us. Not all advocacy has to happen in Frankfurt. A lot of the best advocacy happens in DC. And it's going to be a little bit more of an uphill battle, especially going into this new Congress and the new administration. But we have policy. It's a matter of making it a priority. So who are you going to talk to make this a reality? So that being said, I would love to take this chance because we've still got a little bit of time. I have a tendency to talk fast. So I would love to pick everyone else's brains on what creative things have you heard other states doing? What have your colleagues in Colorado been doing? What are they up to when it comes to school feeding? What are some things that you read about in email newsletters that you're like, I wonder if that worked for Kentucky? What would you like to see enacted in our state? You can come off mute or throw it in the chat. It's up to you. Wow, John is Johnny on the spot when it comes to timely links and resources for what I'm referencing. I swear we didn't rehearse this.
Oh, no, we did not rehearse. So I'm frantically looking for links to things that relate to what you say. So
I just want to say that I think John and Jordan are very instrumental in helping us on the school nutrition side with enacting policies and the advocacy of those. It's a collaboration that has grown just from our collaboration with you guys to this KFED network and many other networks. So I would say that has been a big change that I have seen in the past couple of years that we very much appreciate and very much look forward to continuing to foster.
Well, we love working with KSNA. We love talking at your advocacy day last year. We are honored for you. Well, oh gosh, I said last year. That was this year. Man, 2024 has been a year. We really appreciate working with KSNA. They're one of our most valuable partners, and we want to thank you personally for the work that all of you do. And also just want to thank you for being a swell group to work with. Not all coalitions are easy to get along with. There are a lot of competing ideas on how to solve the same problem, but it seems like we never have that issue with KSNA. We know where we want to go and we know how to get there. And y'all make real nice companions for that trip. So
Sorry, guys, I've lost internet in Buckhorn.
Okay. Tony Jackson says mailing summer feeding boxes again. And when summer is in session, we're allowed to operate. Right. Does anyone have any feedback or perspective on summer feeding boxes?
I'd like to share a little things about summer feeding. I put in the chat box that there's the Summer Meals Act of 2024, which is another piece of federal legislation that's been proposed that would make several changes to the summer feeding program. One is to allow 3 meals a day. It would reduce the area to eligibility from 50% free and reduced to 40%. It would also provide some transportation grants to be able to do kind of mobile meals, mobile summer routes out there, that if you guys are not familiar with the Summer Meals Act of 2024, take a look at that. Because I think it would be helpful to you guys. It would also allow you to do summer feeding all year long. If you're not a school district, that you're just doing summer feeding, that those would be some options there to look at. That I think Larson, Representative Larson, is one of the sponsors of that bill. And all of those, I will tell you right now, other than one representative out, I think he's from West Kentucky, and I can't think of right now. I'm blanking. Mick Garvey, is that right? That he is the only one that has really, no, that's not right. Yes. Anyway, he is the only one who had signed on for sponsoring any of these bills. So these federal pieces of legislation that Jordan and I are talking about, we're lacking a Kentucky senator to being signed on. So if you get a moment to talk to Senator McConnell or Senator Paul, let them know that you support these types of legislation. If you're a U.S. representative, if you have a relationship with them, or even if you don't, make sure that you reach out and let them know that you support these federal pieces of legislation, just to let them know that you're behind this. I will caution you guys that before you do that using any school resource, make sure that you check about the policies on advocacy with your school email, a school computer. Maybe you'll need to use a personal email or your personal cell phone to do this advocacy, because Jordan and I don't want to get anyone in trouble encouraging you to do this, but make sure that you check and make sure that it is okay before you do that. If not, use your personal resources to do the advocacy.
Tony, that's very exciting that you have a meeting with Senator McConnell. I don't wonder, now that he's stepping down as Senate leader, and I don't wonder that now that he is kind of out and proud about how much he does not care for the incoming administration, if that might prompt him to be a little bit more heavy-handed in terms of what he speaks up for. So I see absolutely no harm and seeing if he wants to do one last ditch effort for child feeding. He has been a tremendous ally on feeding programs in the past, especially for Kentucky. And if you would love resources to present to him of saying, hey, 1 in 5 of your constituents' children are going hungry, here's what's need to happen. It's entirely possible that as he transitions out, he'll be less inclined to play the game and more inclined to make a difference, or at least I hope he will. So if you'd love resources on that, we would love to provide those.
Jordan and I met with McConnell's office around the School Hunger Elimination Act in September, and really we were pitching for the increase in multiplier in CEP because we had consistently heard that that's what you guys wanted from the school nutrition standpoint. So we were trying to get some headway there. They were waiting for the Congressional Budget Office's report on how much it would cost was the feedback that we had got. So Tony, when you meet with them, just see if that information is available to be able to put that out when you have that meeting with McConnell's office, if you're going to talk about increasing the multiplier. One of the things that I would like to see, and I don't know, those of you who do summer feeding that's on this call, how many of you would like, if you're in a designated urban area, would you like to see more non-congregate kind of expand to not only rural communities, but to all communities? Because I know that's a limiting factor in providing access to summer meals. That's one of the things I would like to advocate for as well, to just make sure that we can provide non-congregate everywhere. 100%. That's it, Kristen. I know Kristen's doing the good work in Fayette County trying to feed kids in summer, and that non-congregate restricted to rural areas is a challenge in some of these counties that have more rural, less have some urban designated area. Jessamine County, Leanne Connor, who couldn't be with us today, there's a nice story that I'm going to put in the chat box that we've written about her fight to get expansion to non-congregate in a high need area in Jessamine. So you guys may want to check that out. I'm going to be quiet now.
I have to express some frustration about the rhetoric around non-congregate, because at least legislatively, when I advocate, you would be surprised. I don't know if you actually would be surprised about how many legislators are just so terrified of hungry families taking advantage of the system. And it's amazing to watch the legislators pick and choose which groups they draw the line on taking advantage of systems. Because ever since the 80s, there's been rhetoric about, well, what if people are abusing welfare? What if people are abusing our feeding systems? And it's like, truth be told, at least speaking for myself, these views do not represent my organization or my employer. I don't particularly care if there's the occasional case, if it means that more kids get fed. We can obviously always do more to close loopholes, but I think we need to start taking a harder line with legislators and being like, yeah, sure, there might be the occasional case of a family pulling through that doesn't need the meal, but so what? If it gets 10 more families fed, then that's worth it to us. And so many legislators hide behind, well, how do you make sure that they actually need it? We need it congregate for X, Y, or Z reason. It's like, no, we need to reach out to more people. It's time to destigmatize hunger. And I think a lot of legislators also kind of hide behind the idea of there should be a certain amount of shame for hunger. I was speaking with one senator recently who said that he feels that hunger should be a motivating force, and that there's a certain amount of it that's good for a family to experience in order for them to pick themselves up by their bootstraps, forgetting, of course, how much hunger is not just demoralizing, but disables you from picking yourself up by your bootstraps. So it's that kind of rhetoric that we have to actively work against every day to counter that mindset that hunger should be shameful. Ironically, Emily, this person has experienced childhood hunger extensively, as he reminds everyone who speaks to him. It's just it's a good old-fashioned case of, well, I made it, so everyone else should be able to make it too. And you have to counter these narratives with a smile on your face. And we got to do the hard work on changing the narrative. I'm sure everyone recalled that one song that came out this last summer about like Richmond, north of Richmond, about how there's welfare queens and we're paying for their fudge rounds. And it's like this narrative is 40 years old at this point, and we still haven't gotten tired of bashing poor people. Really? That's where we're drawing the line on the system not working. It's nauseating, it's frustrating, and I'm tired of it. And I hope all the other advocates that I work with will start taking that line too with legislators of, I'm not going to hold any quarter. If you come at me with one of these talking points, I don't care. It shouldn't matter to you, and it doesn't matter to me. So off of my soapbox, thank you for everyone who participated in the question service. mobile meals are working in Perry County and they work wonderfully. That is really refreshing to hear. I know our food banks do a lot of mobile work. I recently toured Dare to Care here in Louisville, and they were seeing lots.
I got to see the Perry County Reach in person. I was at the public library when they pulled up, and just the kids. I don't know. I could probably cry on this call, but anyway, I won't. I will shave my tears for later. But trying to explain to them what an apricot and a and a broccoli was very interesting. So.
And something that stood out to me when I toured that summer feeding site this last summer is the cafeteria workers. I was like, so do you do any like sort of check to see whether they qualify for these meals? And they're like, no. If you're a family passing through our area on a road trip and you just want meals for your kids, that's fine. You know, that to me is the American way of just providing for your neighbors without certification. You know, I think that is what the dream is all about, and it's really frustrating that it's been twisted to such a degree that we need to put you through 8 rounds of paperwork. That way we can make certain that you deserve food. It's like nobody should have to deserve food. We're the only country in the world that doesn't recognize food as a human right, and I think that is nonsense. So I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted.
I hate to pick on Steve, but I know in his area where Northern Kentucky is a very, a lot of its areas designated rural, he became urban. He became a regional feeding hub for Northern Kentucky with this rural non-congregate.
Lori, excellent point about local farm food purchasing. We have that gap, and we need other measures that do farm to school table.
You are cutting out a little bit for me, Jordan, but I'm not sure if it's just on my end or if it's yours.
No, he was cutting out
like a background noise. So just wanted to say to John's point, we knew going into summer for non-congregate that there are 18 school districts in Campbell County. We are just one of those. And we also knew that historically, and obviously we don't want to compare summer non-congregate to COVID, but in some aspects, I think one derived the other. And for us, we knew the need that existed through COVID. So there was the similar thought process going into non-congregate, and thank goodness we went in with that thought process, because we do pick up. I'll say this: we have parents, families who show up from Indiana, Ohio, all over Campbell County. So south, they get Pendleton. I mean, that being said, I posted this in chat, and it's worth saying out loud that if you are someone part of non-congregate, I think when you visually have the ability to see the need in person, the weight of that for people who care is priceless. And the motivation that comes from seeing the need exist leaves you to feel that you do not have an option but to act. And to Jordan's point, if we can shift the mentality to be that this is just simply the right thing to do, to invest in our children, and that food is a right for people, it should not be complicated. And there's lots of things to the slide posted on our screen between our state and federal that we need to be working towards. And I do think, to Leah's point, we have the right team here to see those things come to fruition. So thank you guys. Thank you for making this happen. And thank you guys for providing an outlet for me to at least be able to come in and say, this is how I truly feel. Because seeing these things in action from this side, we have made an impact. We cannot stop. There is a hill to climb, but we have, as a team here in this room, made a positive impact. We just have a lot more work to do.
Thank you, Steve.
I see Lori with her hand raised next.
Yes, Lori.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that one argument that I've heard for universal school meals that kind of avoids the whole who deserves it and who doesn't is that students are required to be in school. Like if they don't go to school, their parents can go to jail if they don't go to school. And there's like no other situation in which that happens where we don't provide food for people. Like people in jail, we provide their meals for them because they have to be there. So that's just wanted to add that to the conversation.
No, that's an excellent point. And before I was glitching there for a sec, or maybe there's other sound, I don't know. Farm to school is ever more important. Studies show that kids are more likely to eat the food that is put before them if they know where it comes from and they know that it's local. And buying local is like one of the biggest talking points in Kentucky. Everybody loves supporting small businesses. Everybody loves their farmers. And it's time we start taking advantage of that sentiment and getting some legislation moving. And I think it's high time that we start embracing that more frequently. So I wanted to thank everybody for their time. Really appreciate you spending an hour with me. I don't know if this presentation is 60 minutes or 75, but I'd be happy to take some questions. John would be happy to take some questions either on or offline, depending on everyone's availability or how much time they've got. But we really appreciate you guys. You make this sort of work really fulfilling. It's great to see this many people turn out. And I'm overwhelmed with optimism every time.
Well, Jordan, tell them how they can join us at Hunger Free Kentucky Day and ways that they can get money. Yes.
Excellent plug.
And then I've got one more. I want to make one more plug before you do that. Lori and I are working. A lot of people are working very closely on the Kentucky Farm to School Summit, which is going to be December 4th in Elizabethtown. So if you've not registered, make sure you're registered to come hang out with us there at the Hardin County Extension Office. And then if you are feeling like you'd like to learn a little bit more, we've got some pre-summit events. LaRue County, we're doing an aquaponic tour. Lori, is there another pre-summit visit that we've got lined up?
No, we only ended up with one.
We want to see you at the Farm to School Summit in Elizabethtown.
Yes. And quick plug for Hunger Free Kentucky Day on February 18th of 2025 at the Frankfort Capitol. Feeding Kentucky will be leading a rally followed by a lunch, followed by some advocacy opportunities. So come join the school nutrition directors, the food bankers, the farmers. We're pulling in all corners of the hunger space to show up and show out for hunger. So put it on your calendar. I'm going to be sending out
February 16th, you said?
February 18th.
18th. And then we've got Serving Up Solutions. Don't forget about that.
Yes. So please join us then. We'd love to have you. We are ever so excited for that rally. It was a tremendous success this year. And we're hoping to secure the governor and a couple other rock stars to join us at our rally. So please take your time. The session is sure to be a lot. It is a shorter session, which means it's going to be ever more overwhelming. So take time for yourself. But if you've got an afternoon, please join us February 18th. We would love to have your voice. I'll be sending out concrete emails inviting everyone here soon.
We will also send a follow-up email with all of the resources that have been shared today and a link to the recording too.
All right. And then Serving Up Solutions, which is when we actually make the legislators work for us because they wait on us at the event in Frankfort, is scheduled for February the 6th. And that's another great way to engage with your state lawmakers. We may even be reaching out if we have some trouble getting them to participate. We may want you to reach out and encourage them to be a waiter or server for us during Serving Up Solutions.
So with that, unless anybody has any other questions, I'd be happy to stick around afterwards, or you're welcome to email me. So I can go back to my email address at the start. You are welcome to reach out to me. And I really appreciate each and every one of you.